Hello, I'm Henry Keane and we are UATV. We are online today as usual, no matter what, giving you the Ukrainian perspective of reality, that is of war. Watching the episode. Trump confirms more weapons for Ukraine through NATO sales. $1 trillion, that is how much it would cost to rebuild Ukraine. With Russian terror escalating, anti-Russian bipartisan support in American Senate grows stronger. Please comment and subscribe to our channel while watching it. By doing so, you help us to fight off criminal Russian aggression. Welcome to the News Pulse. They all say it now, every media literally in the world, after Trump has said it, he will send weapons to Ukraine. Yes, he said that. Only one thing to add to it, really. Okay, two things maybe. First, to say to send weapons doesn't mean to actually send it. And second, even to actually send it doesn't mean not to sell it. As in terms of Mr. Trump, it seems there never is a question to do something or not to do anything, and there always is just one question: who's paying for it? This time, Mr. Trump has said he has struck an agreement with NATO for the United States to supply weapons to Ukraine through the alliance, with NATO covering the full cost of it. According to sources, Trump will use the PDA, Presidential Drawdown Authority, right to send arms to Ukraine by presidential decree. Congressional approval is not needed for this. The volume of the aid package to be allocated will amount to about $300 million. It could include missiles for Patriot systems, GMLIS missiles for HIMARS systems, and medium-range offensive missiles. On July 7th, Trump said the US would supply Ukraine with more weaponry, mostly defensive. We have to do that. They have to be able to defend themselves. They are being hit very hard right now. End of quote of Mr. Trump, who said that at the time. The TV did not actually publish the full recording of the conversation with the president, but released some quotes of his instead.
We send weapons to NATO, and NATO pays for these weapons in full. Thus, the weapons we send are sent to NATO, and then NATO supplies these weapons to Ukraine, and the alliance pays for these weapons. Donald J. Trump, President of the United States.
And after that, the Russians, of course, tried to prolong and stall the whole process again by this time contacting the Secretary of American State. Yes, Comrade Lavrov held a meeting with Marco Rubio, but what the Secretary of State has said afterwards of the meeting wasn't really pleasant for hearing for the Kremlin.
Obviously, the loss of life is something of great interest to the president. It's important to note that since January of this year, as an example, just to give you on the Russian side, they've lost 100,000 soldiers, dead. Not injured, I'm talking about dead. And on the Ukrainian side, the numbers are less, but still very significant. And so that's... The president doesn't like wars. He thinks wars are a waste of money and a waste of lives, and he wants them to end. And he's going to do everything he can within his power to end this war and any other war he has a chance to end, as you've seen in the past. And so we're going to continue to work at it. We understand that these things take time.
And what Comrade Lavrov managed to say is, again, to accuse the West and Ukraine of Russophobia, of course.
Yesterday, I gave Marco Rubio a small summary of quotes from Zalinski, Shmyhal, Yermak, Podolyak, Ukraine's top leadership and speakers, where it is explicitly stated that it is necessary to destroy Russians, legally or better physically. And when Mr. Barrot, Minister of Foreign Affairs of France, and his kind declare that they do not want to see anything but territorial integrity of Ukraine, well, this is self-disclosure. Sergei Lavrov, Minister of Foreign Affairs of Russia, during the ASEAN Summit press conference.
You've probably seen that we used that image of Donald Trump, and you've seen that on internet, recently shared by White House. This one. On the White House page, it says, "The symbol of hope, truth, and justice, the American way." At first, I thought it was a joke, then I thought it was a fake. And only then I realized the depth of the abyss the current American administration is actually staring in. I mean, Trump saying he's going to build a wall between states and Mexico. Trump charging 500% tariffs. Then Trump putting Musk in charge. Then Trump charging at Musk. Trump saying Putin wants peace in Ukraine by invading Ukraine. Trump stopping all military aid and intel to Ukraine because Putin is a nice guy and called him a genius even. Then Trump says Putin throws bullshit at America, he's a liar, and Ukraine will receive weapons. And now this, Superman. Well, the root of the problem is not at all morality. That might be questionable but not critical in this regard, and that is exactly the problem. It should be critical, but it's not. No one really cares. Just another joke. That is what Donald Trump turned the image of the President of the United States into. It is not serious anymore. Everything is possible, all can be said, any pose taken, anyone hired or fired, nominated as a friend, as an enemy, or a superhero, Trump himself included. Unpredictability. That is the abyss current American administration is looking into, and the danger is it will be staring at the not only this American administration back. As it might take 250 years to build a national image of beacon of freedom and just 4 years to ruin it. So for all our global sake and future American administrations to come, let us all hope those weapons for Ukraine will actually be delivered as Mr. Super Trump confirmed. And while diplomatic gamers in the world continue to try to strip Ukraine of even defensive weaponry, Russia plans to ramp up its terror on Ukraine to up to 1,000 UAVs overnight. President Zalinski confirmed that to our Western partners. However, he said several domestic Ukrainian manufacturers already have proven technology capable of countering that much of Shahed drones.
We have a solution: interceptor drones. That shoot down everything, well, almost everything. We can mass produce them, accelerate the funding of this process. The important thing is that the key has been found by the Ukrainians, by the way, and by Americans. There are 4 companies. One of these 4 companies is Ukrainian and American. The management is American and the engineers are Ukrainians. We found a solution as a country. Scientists, engineers, we found a solution. This is the key thing. We need finances for that.
As a proof and a brief reminder of President's words, we demonstrate to you now the results of the recent Russian terror shelling of Kharkiv, where a maternity hospital has been critically damaged by Russians. 1 person was killed and 14 injured during a Russian terror attack in the Kharkiv region, and according to the head of the Regional Military Administration, Oleg Sinyahubov, this time Russian terrorists used unguided aircraft missiles, FPV and kamikaze drones in the city of Kharkiv itself. 9 people were injured. 17 houses, several non-residential premises and a maternity hospital were damaged. At the time of the strike, 22 women in labor and 3 newborns were there. They all successfully were evacuated timely. One of the Russian Gerbera drones launched towards Ukraine ended up crashing in Lithuania, having entered the country from Belarus, according to Lithuania's Ministry of Defense. Preliminary reports say the drone was a decoy. It was made of plywood and foam with no actual warhead. Lithuanian authorities are investigating how it ended up in Lithuanian airspace, but UATV can save their time. It is a provocation, no doubt about that, intended to test if NATO country will react in any significant way or not. Russian war machine is not invincible at all, and Ukrainian UAVs proved it many times, this time in the military plant in the city of Tula. Drones also destroyed the Kronstadt UAV facility depot in Moscow region and attacked the Taganrog aircraft company, targeting solely and exclusively military facilities. As you can see on the footage, no debris onto the civilian districts. They could even had some fun to film Ukrainian strikes from afar, standing on their balconies. You can clearly see the difference between the way Russians wage wars and how Ukraine defends itself. We damage and destroy, indeed, but only Russian military facilities, not civilian lives. The United Kingdom and Ukraine have signed a long-term agreement on the supply of air defense missiles manufactured by the French company Thales. According to the official website of the UK government, under the deal, the UK will provide Ukraine with approximately 5,000 missiles over the next 19 years. The total value of the agreement is £2.5 billion, which is more than $3 billion.
From war in Europe to new nuclear risks and daily cyber attacks, the threats we face are multiplying. As close partners and NATO allies, the UK and France have a deep history of defense collaboration, and today's agreements take our partnership to the next level. Keir Starmer, Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, during the visit of the French President.
A Radio Norwegian electronic warfare company will open a representative office in Ukraine, according to Norway's Ministry of Defense. Radio has a long supplied Ukraine's army with communications, equipment and resistant to jamming, which is very important. The ministry added that having a local office in Ukraine will simplify maintenance, enable professional training for Ukrainian soldiers and ensure more effective use of the equipment on the actual battlefield.
Every voice matters. Join our community, support independent journalism and help us bring you the truth from Ukraine. Become a member of Ukraine Today. Join us now.
Full reconstruction of Ukraine will cost $1 trillion over 14 years, Prime Minister Denis Shmyhal said during the Ukrainian Donors Platform meeting at the Recovery Conference in Rome. The plan includes creating two funds, the Ukraine Fund for Rebuilding and a second fund managed by Ukraine, funded by confiscated Russian assets and a special tax on Russian raw material exports. Shmyhal also noted that Ukraine has already received €1 billion from the EU sourced from frozen Russian assets.
We are grateful to our European partners for their solidarity and trust. The initiative we launched together with the G7 is working. Since the beginning of the year, Ukraine has already received over $18.5 billion from frozen Russian assets. We are using these funds to strengthen Ukraine's resilience and speed up recovery. We urge our partners to join us in creating legal tools for the full confiscation of all Russian assets. Denis Shmyhal, Prime Minister of Ukraine, on Telegram.
German Chancellor Friedrich Merz, during a speech at a conference in Rome, has stated that only a material part of the damage caused to Ukraine as a result of Russia's full-scale criminal aggression is estimated at around €500 billion and counting. This is the amount that Moscow should pay as reparations. Until this happens, Russia will not have access to frozen assets abroad, confirms Merz. Now in Europe and other Western countries, frozen Russian assets of the Russian central bank amount to about €300 billion. The key issue remains the mechanism of their redirection for the reconstruction of Ukraine. You are welcome to look into more details. Republican Senator Lindsey Graham expects the Senate to advance a bipartisan Russian sanctions bill that would impose tariffs against countries that support the Russian Federation war. He wrote about that on social network X, commenting on the news of the largest aerial bombardment of Kyiv since the beginning of the Russian full-scale invasion. Graham said that it is time to put an end to this bloodbath. He added that the bill now already has 85 co-sponsors and their number is growing.
The U.S. Congress has intensified discussions over a sanctions bill proposed by Republican Senator Lindsey Graham, which includes unprecedented pressure measures on Russia, such as a 500% tariff and blocking key banks. The bill could be brought to a vote before the August recess, but if delayed, not earlier than September. From the publication Censor.net.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zalinski has met US Senators Lindsey Graham and Richard Blumenthal personally in Rome. They discussed arms supplies to Kyiv and sanctions against Russia. Zalinski referred to the meeting as very good and thanked the senators for their participation in the Conference on Reconstruction and meeting of the Coalition of the Willing. The president noted it is important that the United States, for the first time, joined this format.
Right now, our priority is strengthening air defense. Russia wants to reach the point of using 1,000 drones in a single attack. Therefore, it is important to increase defense, especially to invest in interceptor drones. There was also talk of continued arms deliveries from US and joint production of weapons. We are ready for different formats, and in particular together with Europe to purchase large defense package from the United States to protect life. Separately, we touched on Senators Graham and Blumenthal's bill for additional restrictive measures against Russia and those supporting it in the war. Undoubtedly, this is very level that can bring peace closer and make diplomacy a non-starter. Volodymyr Zalinski, President of Ukraine, on Telegram.
The UK has imposed new sanctions on Russia for using chemical weapons in Ukraine. The sanctions target the Russian Research Institute of Applied Chemistry as well as the deputy head of the Radiological, Chemical and Biological Defense Troops. This institute supplied the Russian army with handheld chemical grenades later used against Ukrainian forces. Europe is betting on the future of Ukraine. The President of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, announced the creation of a European flagship fund for the recovery of Ukraine. In her speech at the conference on the recovery of Ukraine, she said that the fund will be created in cooperation with Germany, France, Italy, Poland, and the European Investment Bank. Its goal is to attract large-scale investments for the revival of the country. The new package of European support assistance to Ukraine from Finland and the Netherlands, Nikita Skoblikov, will talk you into more detail on the topic.
Ukraine needs a Marshall Plan-style recovery effort. That's how President Volodymyr Zalinski framed it at the recent Ukraine Recovery Conference. The event focused on 4 key areas: engaging the private sector in reconstruction and economic growth, developing human capital, rebuilding local communities and regions, and advancing Ukraine's European integration. For successful recovery, Zalinski emphasized the need for a systematic approach, a broad international coalition, active business involvement, and, above all, a clear, actionable plan.
We also need a clear recovery plan. Think of the role the Marshall Plan played in rebuilding and transforming Europe. That's why Europe has enjoyed peace and economic growth for so many decades. And now we have real opportunity to spark a new wave of progress. We need a Marshall Plan-style approach, and we should develop it together. We must clearly agree that frozen Russian assets should go toward Ukraine's recovery.
The conference brought together representatives from over 30 countries and more than 500 companies from Ukraine, Europe, and the United States. According to President Zalinski, around 200 agreements worth over 10 billion euros are already prepared for signing. This is crucial for Ukraine, which estimates that it will need at least $1 trillion to rebuild and modernize the country. Ukrainian Prime Minister Denis Shmyhal added that, given this scale of investment, the recovery process could take up to 14 years.
Our concept envisions the creation of 2 funds totaling $1 trillion. The first is the Ukraine Fund, with $540 billion, the estimated cost of Ukraine's recovery, according to the World Bank. This fund would be financed through confiscated Russian assets and a special tax on Russian raw material exports. The second is a European Structural Support Fund for Ukraine, worth $460 billion. It will serve as a platform for European private sector investments in Ukrainian industry. Denis Shmyhal, Prime Minister of Ukraine, on Telegram.
The European Union recognizes the scale of losses Ukraine has suffered due to Russian aggression and is ready to cover a significant portion of the funds needed for recovery. As European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen stated at the Ukraine Recovery Conference, a global Ukraine reconstruction and renovation fund has been established for this purpose. In addition, the head of the European Commission announced new financial aid packages for Kyiv totaling €4 billion.
I am particularly pleased to announce today the European Flagship Fund for the Reconstruction of Ukraine, the largest equity fund globally to support reconstruction. It will, together with the private sector, kickstart investment in energy, transport, critical raw materials, dual-use industries. We are literally taking a stake in Ukraine's future by leveraging public money to bring large-scale private sector's investments and help the rebuild of the country. And I'm particularly pleased, and I think from the bottom of my heart, that we are building this together with Italy, Germany, France, Poland, and the European Investment Bank.
While the EU is ready to fund Ukraine's recovery from its own budget, EU leaders insist that the aggressor must bear responsibility for the damage inflicted. Otherwise, the frozen Russian state assets will remain untouched.
We estimate the property damage to be around €500 billion. Russia must pay for this damage. Until this has happened, Russia must not and will not have access to the frozen Russian assets. I would also like to say that the freeze will remain in place.
We are meeting here today to discuss how to help Ukraine not only to survive, but to win and to rise again. Not only in material terms, but also spiritually and socially. Ukraine's victory is a matter of security for the whole of Europe. And victory means territorial integrity, sovereignty, and, to put it simply, a just and lasting peace.
The fourth Ukraine Recovery Conference gathered around 5,000 participants. According to the event's official website, roughly 100 national delegations and 40 delegations from international organizations, including financial institutions, took part. These conferences have been held annually since 2022, with previous editions in Lugano, London, and Berlin. Reported by Nikita Skoblikov, UATV News.
Well, that was it for today. My name is Henry Keane and we are Newspulse at UATV. We thank you so very much for your time and attention. We really do appreciate that as it helps us to make Ukrainian voice to be heard worldwide. Please join the fight for freedom and sovereignty by subscribing to our channel. Hope to see you very soon with us. Thank you. Stay tuned and goodbye.